Experts say reading for meaning results in students being able to discuss and understand what they are reading and not just pronounce what the words correctly is declining. The South African schooling system continues to face challenges with literacy. Experts find that 8 out of 10 grade 4 learners cannot read for meaning. The results of the 2023 background report for the 2030 reading panel paint for, or rather make for gruesome reading. Let's speak now to Brahm Fleisch, an education expert on this report and possible interventions. Thank you very much, Mr. Fleisch, for availing yourself this afternoon. So this report does not paint a good picture because many children who leave grade 1, according to it, they do not know the alphabet, and 82% of grade 4 children cannot read for meaning. What are we not doing right?
So it's important to recognize that the background report essentially provides a summary of a great deal of research that's gone on over the last year, in fact, over extended periods. And the estimate of the number of learners that aren't able to read for meaning is based on a projection. It's not on actual information. We haven't yet got the latest PIRLS results. That fact notwithstanding, there's no doubt that we're continuing to have a major crisis in early grade reading. And there is, not only did the panel review the evidence about reading deficits, but it also presented the evidence of high-quality empirical studies undertaken in South Africa about what we can do to actually improve the situation. And there are two particular intervention models that were highlighted. The one involved what has come to be called the education triple cocktail, which is an intervention that combines high-quality materials, lesson plans for teachers, and really good quality support to teachers in the form of training and coaching in the classroom. The second model, which in some sense emerges because of our youth employment project, was to provide good quality materials for teachers, but also employ young education assistants in the classroom to assist with reading and supporting reading in the classroom.
Yeah, to that point, we understand that this year nearly 30,000 educator assistants are to be reading champions. However, the report notes some concern where that is concerned because the entry requirements for these reading champions are apparently low. They will have no face-to-face training or be submitted to a selection process.
So, I mean, that's obviously a concern. But there's no doubt where if they get the required training, if they are supported in their school, particularly by a head of department foundation phase, they can add significant value to the reading process. One of the most important parts of the reading process is children having an opportunity to read aloud to an adult who may be supportive in the reading process. When you have class sizes of 45 or 50, children often don't have an opportunity, unless they're reading in the home, to really read for an adult, to get practice in reading. So even a young person who may not necessarily be an expert in reading itself could provide an important support for a reading process.
The report notes that nationally, the Department of Basic Education is not giving the reading for meaning crisis specific attention. Meaning what?
So in 2019, the President identified the target of 2030 where 90% of learners would be reading for meaning. So that was very clear in the 2019 State of the Nation. The concern is that that particular target and the plans that need to be put in place have not really been put in place. No additional budget has been made available for this program, and that ultimately means that we're worried that the target, which is a really important target, it's in line with international targets associated with the Millennium Goals and other international benchmarks, won't be achieved. So the concern is that the overall objective was articulated by the President, but that the department and the provincial departments, save for Gauteng and the Western Cape, haven't necessarily put a budget and a program together that will ensure the realization, or at least move us much closer to the realization of that target.
Brahm, is this also not a collective effort? You spoke of children coming home and reading, and sometimes, teachers will give children a book and say, go read at home. The parent must sign. And so what role can parents also play, right, in helping here and plugging the gap and making sure that children read for understanding, and parents just dedicating that, 30 minutes, hour to helping the children as well?
So I think that we need to recognize that reading consists of two components. The learning to read is what would happen in the classroom where the children use the alphabet system to begin to decode. But in order to become proficient readers, they need lots of practice. And the role of the parent is not to teach reading, but really provide a safe space in the home environment where children can practice and begin to enjoy reading. And it doesn't need to be parents. It can be an older sibling. It can be a grandparent. It can be a neighbor. The really important part is that whether they're looking at books that come from a local community library or a classroom library or a school library, that space is created on a daily basis in the home, not for half an hour, but even for 15 minutes, where children can actually begin the process of practicing. That is a crucial part of consolidating reading competence.
That's the best case scenario, that there's somebody at home that can actually afford to do this, because the way South Africa is set up, you've got child-headed households, you've got grandmothers that are raising some of the children, which also presents a rather unique challenge.
So, I mean, the research suggests that in many cases it's not a mom, but it's an aunt or it's a cousin or an older sibling. So what's important is not so much that the parent has an extensive education, but that a space is created and an environment that is warm and loving is created for children to practice the reading process. There's no necessity for a parent to be an expert in early grade reading. All that is important is that they create the space where children can enjoy the reading process and become really lovers of reading. That's the precondition to becoming really proficient readers.
Brahm, how is it that many children leave grade 1 without knowing the alphabet?
So we still don't really know exactly what happened in the grade 1 classes. So we're still waiting for ethnographic studies to understand what it is that's happening in the foundation phase, and particularly in the grade 1. What is very disturbing is that kind of very, very core early step in the reading journey is not taking place in the majority of our classrooms.
What are we finding, especially in the research, when it comes to language? Is this in the English language? Is it in indigenous languages that we're finding that children are not able to read for meaning?
So, I mean, I think that there's a consensus in South Africa now that children learn best when they're learning in their home language. That's a little complicated in a place like Gauteng, where a significant number of children are learning in one of the 9 African languages, but it may not necessarily be their home language. But the overall consensus is that for at least the first 3 years and possibly even longer, it's best that children begin to learn and begin the reading journey in their home language. So what we're seeing is not just that children are not able to read for meaning in English, which obviously is important if they're going to beginning to learn in English in grade 4. But we're seeing in the PEARLS results that children are struggling to learn to read in their home language. And that's really the core of the challenge. It's not just learning to read in English, but even in a language that they're fully familiar with, where they really are competent and confident in, children are not really breaking the code of reading.
Sure. The report notes some sparks of hope, in particular 2 provinces, the Western Cape and Gauteng. What are they doing right?
So the Western Cape has been doing a lot of different things over the last 2 decades. They're one of the only provinces that have continued to monitor learning outcomes, particularly reading outcomes in the foundation phase. So their systemic evaluation has given them a picture of change over time. They've also put in place a very effective professional development program over an extended period. Gauteng has also been working on early grade reading during the term of Barbara Creasy. She had one of the more successful interventions called the Gauteng Primary Literacy and Numeracy Strategies, and I worked closely with the department then. It currently has a very effective program to try and incorporate grade R, which is a really important foundation for children to learn a whole lot of the underlying skills for literacy, and Gauteng is leading the way in developing their grade R program. They've also, with partners, are starting to build classroom libraries, and again, I'm working closely with them on that issue. So there's a whole range of different initiatives in both provinces, but they're both very clearly focused on understanding that unless you get the foundation right, very difficult to build sustained learning across the entire system.
Sure. In 2022, during the education budget vote, it specifically allocated for reading 11 million rand to the early grade reading assessment. it targets 18 schools. However, the Department of Basic Education only managed to reach 9 schools. Do we know why?
So the early grade reading assessment is an instrument that teachers use in the classroom to help them identify what particular areas learners are having difficulty with. And the training has happened over the last 10 years. So it's not only this current financial year, but over an extended period, and the training has gone on. I'm not sure what explicitly what the budget was earmarked for in the 2022 year, but certainly that's part and parcel of the department's efforts to help teachers assess the potential learning difficulties that learners are having in their classroom.
Brahm Fleisch is an education expert. Thank you very much for your time.